Satnam and welcome everyone. Welcome to the Sovereign Women podcast, where it is our mission to disrupt generational karmic patterns of emotional pain and trauma. It is an honor to be here with you today with our honored guest, Tatiana Szulc, who is a licensed mental health counselor. She's a somatic experiencing practitioner. I can't wait to find out more about that as well. And she's here today to share a little bit about her journey and the work that she does in the world, which sounds absolutely amazing and very, very much needed. How are you today, Tatiana?
I am so great. Thank you so much for having me here.
So, oh my gosh, when I read your title and a little bit of the work that you did, it just sounded so fascinating. Can you tell us first a little bit of what it is that you do, and then we'll get into kind of how you got into it?
Absolutely. So, somatic experiencing is a body-oriented approach to healing trauma and rewiring the nervous system. So, we are working directly with the nervous system, and we don't need to talk about the traumatic experiences you've had or even remember the traumatic experiences you've had to heal from trauma. We are directly working with the activation in your nervous system to change the physiology and to move you through your survival states, fight, flight, or freeze.
Oh my gosh, exactly in alignment with all the things that we talk about in the podcast. So, how did you get into that work or that type of work? Did you grow up kind of knowing that you were going to be doing things in the mental health field, or what was it that led you to this?
Yeah, so I did kind of grow up knowing that I wanted to be in the mental health field in some way, and the reason for that is because I have always lived in survival mode. So I'm a complex trauma survivor, and I've lived in a state of fight, flight, and freeze for as long as I can really remember. And so I initially wanted to work with children and teens because I really wanted to help children and adolescents not feel the way that I did growing up. And so I got into um, college and I began to study psychology, and I really loved psychology and I was fascinated by it. And so I decided to double major with psychology and human development and family studies. And from there, I knew that I wanted to be a therapist. And so I got my master's in mental health counseling. And after I graduated, I went into working in community mental health. And so in working with community mental health and just like naturally the population that I'm working with, I I was working with really high risk clients and people who had a lot of trauma, but I was also in a state of survival. So I was dealing with my own trauma and I was trying to help people heal from their trauma. And so I was constantly in this state of activation, sympathetic activation, fight or flight, go, go, go. I constantly needed all of this stimulation. I was a perfectionist. I was a people pleaser. I lacked boundaries. And whenever we're in a state of fight or flight for too long, we always fall into states of freeze, right? And so that's where depression lives. That's where burnout lives, dissociation, low self-esteem, right? The list can go on. And so I was constantly going from fight or flight to freeze, fight or flight to freeze. And it was just an ongoing battle. And 2020 came, the pandemic came, everybody was working from home, and I no longer had that stimulation. I couldn't be on the go. I had to force myself to slow down and rest. And that was really, really, really difficult for me because my entire life I had been stuck in the state of survival. And so I was starting to feel really unfulfilled with my life. I was starting to feel like maybe this isn't what I want to do for the rest of my life. At that time, I had asked my supervisor, like I was kind of just sharing with her, this is how I'm feeling. I don't know what to do. And she had suggested to do a training. She said, maybe you just need some inspiration. And I said, sure, let me just do a training. I started Googling mind body trainings. Um, Shortly before that I had gotten my meditation teacher certification. So I knew I wanted to do something related to mind body practices because I was using that meditation training, and I came across somatic experiencing, and I just read about it and it sounded cool. I didn't know what somatic experiencing was, but I was like, okay, I'll just do it. And when I did it, I had no idea it was going to be so absolutely life-changing for me. And that is when I started to finally shift out of survival mode. So I had been in talk therapy for years. I've tried all of the different healing modalities like EMDR and IFS and talk therapy, right? And nothing was really supporting me. Nothing was really helping me in the way that I felt like I needed to be helped until I came across somatic experiencing, because part of the training requires you to do your own personal sessions. And so that's when I started to notice a shift in my nervous system. And when I tell you it's been life-changing, it's truly been life-changing, right? Like, and I want to spread more awareness of somatic experiencing, because somatic experiencing is very different than other forms of somatic healing. And it's not just learning somatic tools, it's truly a deep level of healing. So that's how I got to where I am today.
Beautiful. The best teachers are those that have overcome something in their life, and it looks like you're perfectly set up to now help others do this. I want to go back to what you were saying about complex trauma. So you said you grew up kind of in this situation with complex trauma. For our audience members who don't understand, can you please help us understand what first complex trauma is? And second, how did that correlate as a solution to what somatic healing is?
Yeah, totally. So I think in order to understand complex trauma, we first need to understand what trauma is in general, because trauma, a lot of people think that trauma is in the event, but trauma is actually the response that your nervous system has to something that you experience. So trauma is the survival energy that's been stored in your body. So trauma is not an event that you experience. So I had, since an early age, I had multiple experiences. I kind of had ongoing stress that my nervous system was experiencing. And so that's what we would call complex trauma. I've been living in a state of survival mode for as long as I can remember. I think even as early as maybe 5 years old. And so when we think about maybe trauma as like an isolated and trauma versus complex trauma, trauma is maybe someone experienced a car accident and that caused the trauma in your body, right? And so that wouldn't be complex trauma because it's just an isolated experience, versus when you have multiple stressors or multiple experiences where your nervous system can't really recover, right? It doesn't have that resiliency. um, you start to develop complex trauma. So that's what I was experiencing, and I forget what the other question was.
And how did that correlate with the somatic healing? Why do you believe that it actually works so well?
Yeah, so the reason why I think it works so well is because it's truly changing your physiology. And so it's working directly with the nervous system. So, for example, I had been a therapist at that point for 4 years. And so I knew all of the tools that I had to use. I was helping my clients with this, right? And I had tried other healing modalities, but nothing was really working directly with my entire nervous system. It was working with maybe my brain, my mindset, my memories. And instead of just working with your brain, your cognitive brain, and um, one piece of the puzzle, you're working with the entire nervous system. We're getting to the root of the problem instead of just focusing on the brain, which is only one thing that the nervous system is responsible for. So I think that's why for me it shifted things so much, and that's probably why it works so well with other people too, right? Because we are working directly with the nervous system, getting to the root of the problem and changing the physiology.
Oh, I love that. Such a beautiful explanation. So based on that, what is your opinion or even experience with clients and maybe even yourself with generational trauma? How
Mhm.
what have you seen patterns yourself and your clients and yourself? Is that something that you agree is real, or is that something that you believe that is not real and that we have to deal with our own stuff when we're born?
1000%, I think that generational trauma is real. Generational trauma is at 1000% real. So I think it goes back to remembering what trauma is, right? Because even when we don't have conscious awareness of things, our bodies are still experiencing, right? Our bodies are always sensing and detecting danger, right? And so even if cognitively we're not aware that something's impacting us, or cognitively we think that something isn't impacting us, the body might be saying something different. And so generational trauma is just that, right? We don't have conscious awareness. Maybe sometimes we do, but a lot of the time we don't have conscious awareness of what our ancestors have experienced or of what our caregivers have experienced, right? And when we don't heal trauma, that again changes your physiology so that it's passed down to the next generation and the next generation. So, in order to not pass down your trauma, we need to work on our own nervous system because our genes, we can change our genes by healing and we can change our genes by not healing, right? And so that is going to be passed down through generations. I like to think about, when we have like chronic illness or diseases that are passed down, right? And we say that things are genetic, right? Those are years and years and years of dysregulated nervous systems. That's actually what it is. And it's trauma, right? Because a dysregulated nervous system is a traumatized nervous system. So we have to begin to look at trauma in that sense. Um, so when we don't heal those internal wounds, those are going to be passed down.
Mm, thank you. That makes a lot of sense and easy to understand too. So, as it relates to somatic healing, what does it actually look like? What did it look like for you? Like, what were the daily things you were doing? What are the things you do now? Or even visiting with a client or someone who comes to you, what is it that you had guide them to actually do with somatic healing?
Totally. So in our somatic experiencing sessions, I'm tracking the client's nervous system for physiological cues of fight, flight, or freeze. And depending on where they are, I'm helping the client complete the survival response that wasn't completed at the time of the original perceived or actual threat, because the nervous system doesn't use logic, right? And so even if we perceive a threat, the nervous system is going to immediately go into the state of activation. And so because the nervous system doesn't use logic, the nervous system doesn't understand that you're no longer in danger. The nervous system still thinks that the perceived or actual threat is still here. And so we have to create safety in the nervous system. And we do that by allowing the client to identify and connect with internal resources, external resources, completing those survival responses, and building the capacity to be with all sensations and emotions. And so the goal is to really help the nervous system have more flexibility and flow. So a nervous system that isn't regulated, a dysregulated or unhealed nervous system is going to get stuck in fight or flight, stuck in freeze, stuck in fight or flight, stuck in freeze, as opposed to having this flexibility and flow where you can go into a sympathetic state of activation. Maybe you can feel anxious or angry or irritable, and then just a few seconds or minutes later, you're back into this parasympathetic state where you feel more calm and settled and safe.
Okay. So what did life look like for you or for a client with the regulated nervous system? We know why it sounds like it's pretty clear what we feel like with a dysregulated nervous system. What does a regulated nervous system look like?
Yeah, so a regulated nervous system is going to look different for everybody, but for example, for me, I was able to slow down. So one thing in community mental health, I was working over 40 hours a week. I was working over 10 hours a day. I had like 40 clients on my caseload. It was a lot for my nervous system, and I couldn't slow down. Now I'm in private practice. I work 3 days a week. And I think that's the biggest shift of being able to give myself permission to rest and slow down and just be and live my life a little bit more authentically, right? So every thought, emotion, sensation, behavior is a reflection of the state of your nervous system. So I can show up more authentically because I've healed my nervous system. I can set boundaries because I've healed my nervous system. I can take healthy risks because I've healed my nervous system. This is a perfect example, right? Like being here and doing this podcast with you is a perfect example because historically, I would have never A, had a podcast, or B, be a guest on anybody's podcast, right? Like I had so much anxiety that I couldn't take a healthy risk like this. And it seems small, but really your nervous system is going to dictate everything in your life.
Oh my gosh, so true. It starts there, and also what's so true about what you say is, the mental health care practitioners, doctors. I heard that the highest suicide rate is with surgeons, and
Mm,
that they're really struggling with what is known as compassion fatigue, where their
yeah.
brain, literally the frontal cortex, separates from the brain. It doesn't function, which is why you would think some of these doctors are like they should have bedside manners. They should be kinder. It's a brain issue. It's a nervous system issue. It's these people that tend to give so much of themselves to others that truly need that help
Mhm.
first. And
Yeah.
I think it's so it resonates so much with what you said about helping so many others when you were still moving through your trauma. Which
Mhm.
I want to ask, what do you recommend, especially for women, because we tend to put everyone before ourselves. We think that that's the heroic way until nervous system breakdown, burnout. What are some ways that women can start to really work with somatic healing to help them regulate their nervous system? What are some small things that they could start doing?
Yeah, small things are really just bringing your awareness back into your body and noticing what feels good. It's as simple as that, right? Because sometimes when we're on this healing journey, we might think that we need to focus on the the things that we need to heal, our wounds, our the uncomfortable emotions and sensations. But really, we're going to build resiliency in the nervous system, and we're going to be able to reconnect with our nervous systems when we focus on what feels good inside. When we focus on what feels good inside, we create more safety. So, noticing if there's anything in your body that is feeling open or soft or relaxed. Noticing if, there's something in your body that's feeling less anxious or less tense, right? And the more safety that you create in your body, the more that you'll be able to show that in your behaviors, like setting boundaries or honoring your internal boundaries more.
And so, what would you recommend for someone if they're actually feeling the opposite of that? What if they're feeling complete anxiety, complete fear, anger? How would they better be able to respond to that so that it doesn't continue to be a pattern?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so, on the one hand, we can do some somatic practices to work through anger and anxiety and depression and all of that. And then on the one hand, if we want to heal long term, then it's really changing that physiology, rewiring the nervous system, right? So, like, One of the practices that I really, really enjoy for anger is the vu-ah. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it stimulates the vagus nerve, which is the primary nerve of the parasympathetic nervous system. So it helps you feel safe, it helps you feel calm, settled, connected. And so when we're angry, we might want to just lean into that anger a little bit more. Inhale, and then let out a big vu-ah all the way until the breath is out. So really just allowing that to go on for as long as you need to. And that does something to your body and your brain, right? It stimulates your vagus nerve, but it also helps you feel this sense of empowerment and you feel a little bit stronger in your body. Not for everyone, but most women that I do this with. And I think that especially for women, because a lot of the time we're told that we can't be angry, that we can't be aggressive, right? But through somatic practices and somatic experiencing, we can allow ourselves to access that healthy aggression. So, aggression doesn't have to be a bad thing, and anger is definitely not a bad thing, right? And so, it's knowing how to access these emotions and sensations in a healthy way that feels contained.
I love that. It's not that the emotion that's bad, it's what you're going to do with it. How are you going to respond to it? What are you going to do with it? You also mentioned the vagus nerve. Can you touch just a little bit on that? Because that's a term that a lot of people are hearing now. And I really do believe it's going to be the foundational future for medicine as well and healing. Can you touch on how that works and as it relates to the nervous system?
Yeah, 1000%. So the vagus nerve is like I said, the primary nerve of the parasympathetic nervous system. So it starts at the brainstem and it ends in the abdomen. So it's actually a pair of nerves and it's actually on both sides of your body, but we tend to refer to the vagus nerve as if it's only one nerve, but it's actually a pair of nerves. So it's on both sides of your body and um, there are a ton of somatic practices that you can do to stimulate this nerve and help you feel more safe, connected in your body. So whenever we think about like gut health issues, or I mean, everything's connected, right? Like your heart, your kidneys, your gut, your stomach, your bladder, right? The list can go on. All of your internal organs, everything's connected, but stimulating this nerve is going to support all of those different internal organs. So allowing the nervous system to feel a little safer. And again, that's what we need to rewire the nervous system. We need that safety.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I just keep hearing that the Vegas number is going to become something that people are going to be talking about on the streets. Like it's going to be normal. It's just
Mhm.
not hitting mainstream media. And I think people should really understand that it really is that simple and we don't have to make it complicated. It's the consistency part. So I always like to end with our podcast by asking our guests, what does sovereignty mean to you?
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think it goes back to what we were saying about reconnecting with our bodies and um, connecting with that healthy aggression and allowing ourselves to feel empowered and strong and have control over our entire being, right? Because once we connect with our bodies, once we connect with our sensations and emotions, we can really allow ourselves to be more in control of ourselves, living our daily lives more intentionally, right? As opposed to allowing our thoughts or our emotions to overwhelm us and kind of be in control of us. So really connecting with our entire being, healthy aggression, empowerment, sensations, emotions, all of it, right? Like just our entire being.
I love that. Be authentically who you are. No
Mhm.
apologies. Absolutely love it. It's been such an honor and to have you here as a guest. Where can our audience find you if they wanted to connect with you?
Yeah, so you can find me at tatiana.holistic.coach on Instagram. You can hang out with me there, send me a DM. I love to connect with everyone who follows me. I also have a podcast. It's called She is Resilient, and Veronica was actually just on the podcast. So come hang out with me there. And if you want to work together, you can just send me a DM and we can chat about what your options are.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much, Tatiana. It was such an honor to have you as a guest today. I'll make sure
Thank
that
you.
I post all of your information in the description in case anyone would like to reach out to you. Ladies, women, audience, this is the future of healing. Take care of your nervous system. Let's deal with those generational patterns at the root cause, and let's all reclaim ourselves. Thank you once again, Tatiana. Thank
Thank
you.
you
Everyone.
so much.
See you on the next one.